what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America, today. Welcome to our show. It's Thursday, March 9th, 2017. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. It's a very busy news day. A lot of breaking news still coming on in. And we're going to try and stay on top of it all. And I have no guarantees I'm going to be able to take very many phone calls. But the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room back today from his little journey away from us. And welcome back to Mike. And getting on into the news here, the corporate media is either trying to ignore these two major scandals, the WikiLeaks dump and Obama bugging Trump with as much dignity as they can muster, or they're already out there trying to dismiss it, ridicule it, or find somebody else to blame. And I am not kidding you. The Washington Post is now saying Russia's behind the CIA leak to WikiLeaks. Russia did it. Russia leaked the CIA files. Russia hacked the Democratic National Committee computers. Russia hacked the election. Russia's stealing socks from my dryer at night. Russia plants gray hairs on my head while I sleep. Russia caused the quake in Hawaii this morning. Russia's evil, evil, evil. And it's just on non-stop about that. Now, of course, we're getting some different opinions from other things. The former CIA director, Michael Hayden, is blaming the millennial culture for all this leaking information, these upstart young people who think that the people should be able to peek inside the government that their taxes support and find out what's going on here. Oh, those uppity whippersnappers, they should just sit down and shut up and pay taxes and die in our wars like the deity meant them to do, and so forth and so on. Now, we also have this other story here. This is coming out of the Daily Mail, where they're putting the blame on CIA contractors who were working for the CIA. And remember, Edward Snowden was technically a contractor at the NSA. So blame the Russians, blame the millennials, blame the contractors. The truth is the CIA doesn't have a clue what hit them. Everybody is just out there guessing. And they're in a huge, huge panic because all that's been released so far, as damaging as it is, WikiLeaks says this is just 1%. There's a lot more coming. There's a lot worse coming. And it's coming out bit by bit by bit here. So just let's go back and recap so far the most shocking revelations from what's been happening. Is the CIA's hacking smartphones, routers, computers, even televisions, iPhones, iPads, Android devices, which have been marketed by saying they're secure and they'll protect your secrets. The CIA deliberately infected personal computers with spyware, including Windows, Mac OS X, Solaris, Linux, other operating systems. They've hacked Wi-Fi routers to monitor Internet activity, and they've worked out how to bypass, or they've bought off the antivirus companies so that those antivirus packages will not detect the CIA's malware. And they've also worked very diligently to try and make the rest of the world believe that it's Russian hackers, not the CIA, are behind all this cybercrime that's been going on here. I remember in the good old days, I mentioned this a little while ago, in the good old days, webcams came with built-in privacy shields that you could lower over the lens. Power and Wi-Fi switches were actual mechanical devices that actually shut things off. You could take the batteries out of your cell phones and tablets and so forth. And have you noticed that all those things have gone away? You can't take the batteries out of your devices. So even if you power them off, there's still power in there. And just like the TVs, it may look like it's off, but it isn't really. And I'm actually getting word from our control room at Republic Broadcasting. Apparently, it looks like ISPs are starting to blacklist the Republic Broadcasting domain and servers. Apparently, they're getting complaints about that. A lot of people are getting their website shut down. A friend of ours has a website, all of a sudden can't log into her own blog. Clearly, they're in panic mode over there, and they don't care that we're seeing all this stuff being done. Now, the CIA has come out with a plea, a beg, if you will, to the American people that we shouldn't read what WikiLeaks is putting on out there because the CIA is necessary to protect us from terrorists and criminals. And WikiLeaks is harming national security, and we as loyal Americans should close our eyes and stick our fingers in our ears and just shut up and pretend that everything is all still hunky-dory. CNN has gone as far as to basically say the total and complete destruction of the Fourth Amendment and its reckless abuse by a ruthless and dangerous government agency is nothing to worry about. So remember, no privacy at all is the real freedom. Also, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, warming is cooling, and Russia is to blame for everything going wrong. You can just smell the panic in the air. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, there are some other people with different opinions. Dennis Kucinich is out there saying that the revelations of what the CIA is doing shows that this nation is sliding down that slippery slope towards totalitarianism where private lives do not exist. Even Comey is out there saying that spousal communications are within judicial reach. Remember the old adage that a wife could not be forced to testify against her husband? Doesn't apply to their emails anymore. Total surveillance, total informational awareness. We are in a constitutional crisis, and Kucinich is saying this requires a full-throated response from the American people. He is absolutely right. You have got to stand up, all of you, every one of you, and just shout, this is unacceptable in the United States of America. And a lot of people have been saying that all along, and I'd like to read you a quote from the late George Carlin, who, as he got on later in life, decided that there was no reason for him not to tell the truth as he said it. So this is from George Carlin. Rights aren't rights if someone can take them away. They're privileges. That's all we've ever had in this country is a bill of temporary privileges. And if you read the news even badly, you know that every year the list gets shorter and shorter. Sooner or later, the people in this country are going to realize the government doesn't care about you or your children or your rights or your welfare or your safety. It's interested in its own power. That's the only thing. Keeping it and expanding it wherever possible. That was George Carlin. One of those individuals that we never fully appreciated until after they are gone here. Paul Craig Roberts is out there saying that Washington's benevolent mask is disintegrating. And it is. And the American people are beginning to see just how ugly our government has truly become and why it is so hated around the world. Paul Joseph Watson is chiming on in saying that the media hates WikiLeaks because so far they have an impeccable record of getting things right, credibility, spotless record, quite in contrast with the corporate media that seems to follow the advice, if at first you don't succeed, lie, lie again. Now, WikiLeaks is already releasing more information, basically saying CIA's hackers are able to travel the world, go into Europe, because they're being given State Department cover. They're being given diplomatic passports, which allow them to bypass security and bypass inspections, and they just travel all over, pretending to be working for the U.S. State Department, and they're actually CIA assets that are going into these countries to break into their computer systems and spy on their law-abiding citizens. Now, stepping back into history, we need to remember the CIA was created by President Harry Truman after the conclusion of World War II. They basically took the OSS, which was the dirty tricks people during World War II, and they turned it into the Central Intelligence Agency. And even when he was creating it, he said, there's a danger here, we have to keep this thing under control. Then, in the 1970s, shortly before he died, Harry Truman told his biographer, I think the creation of the CIA was a mistake, and if I'd known what was going to happen, I never would have done it. Now, Kim.com, who was the founder of the now-defunct file hosting service Mega Upload, is saying Trump is in danger right now because the deep state is exposed, they're feeling vulnerable. By the way, a little bit of trivia. Kim.com, Julian Assange, and Edward Snowden all have the very same federal prosecutor going after them. So, as it turns out, the CIA knew that they had lost all this information all the way back in 2016. They didn't warn anybody. They didn't tell anybody that all these hacking tools were now out there in the wild. That would be embarrassing for the CIA. Now, a former intelligence official, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, was on Sean Hannity's show last night saying that his information is that the hack on the Democratic National Committee computers and the Podesta email hack were actually carried out by disgruntled ex-intelligence officers who wanted to bring Hillary Clinton down, and they used the CIA's umbrage tools to point the finger of blame at Russia in order to not be arrested or assassinated themselves. That's his take. But at this point, anybody who says Russia's hacking this, or anybody that we have evidence pointing to thus and such of a hacker, it's a complete fraud. It's a complete bluff. You cannot rule out that you're dealing with the CIA itself. Now, people have been trying to write on in and call on in and say that this may just be a PSYOP bluff to scare us all into being silent. Well, if you remember, they said the same thing about Edward Snowden. And it didn't scare us into silence. It made us angry. It made us more vocal. So anybody who thought that was going to change this time really wasn't thinking very clearly. Personally, I think this is the real deal. And even CIA is now saying, yes, this stuff is all genuine. Because what this represents is a loss of capability. Because now everybody knows what the CIA is doing. They're going to be taking steps to regain their privacy, not just here in the United States of America, but around the world. And WikiLeaks has just announced they're going to be distributing all of the actual CIA hacking tools to all the tech companies who want them so they can build in defenses. And that's why we know this is not a PSYOP to scare us into silence, because that loss of capability just completely outweighs any possible benefit of bluffing us into silence. So people are going to be taking steps on that. Apparently Apple's already coming out with another update for the iPhones and iPads that will start blocking off some of this CIA access here. Now then, getting on over to the other big scandal that the corporate media is trying to make go away, we're now hearing that Barack Obama is furious with Donald Trump over the wiretapping allegations. He's just huffed up with his dignity and said, I'm furious about all these tweets. How dare you say such things? How dare you dare? How dare you dare to dare to dare? Methinks the former president doth protest way too much. And the question isn't who Obama was bugging. The question is, who wasn't he bugging? Because he cast a wide, wide net. And everybody's saying this really is way beyond Watergate, because on two separate occasions, last November and again in January, the FBI said they had found absolutely nothing supporting the allegation that there was any kind of cooperation or coordination between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. And yet Obama kept the taps in place and shared the information with the Hillary Clinton campaign. According to one of Hillary Clinton's own staffers, has gone public saying, yeah, we all knew about all of it. So, all right, we're going to take a quick phone call here. George in San Francisco, what's on your mind?
Michael, you're really on a roll today. I have an observation and a question.
Yes.
I think we're living in an extraordinary moment in time. Now, because Donald Trump and the mainstream media, the independent media,
yes,
and WikiLeaks, shows like yours have utterly disgraced the mainstream media. It's so amazing. Honest candidates can now run for office in many states, uncorrupted, without big media budgets, carefully using their internet and social media to spread their agenda and win. The more advertising people put out from these bankster-bought candidates, the more people are going to disbelieve them. Donald Trump has opened the door for this. People now know not to trust big media bankster candidates and not to trust big media slander campaigns against honest candidates. So this is huge for the 2018 congressional elections.
Well, basically, we can distill it down even more than that. If a candidate has a huge amount of money coming in from special interests, don't vote for them.
Right.
You know, in fact, there's a new slogan for 2018: vote cheap. Vote for the candidate with the least amount of money. They are, by default, the least corrupt.
Now, this takes us to the next step that we've all got to take now, that you have so eloquently said in your show about promoting, mandatory from the states paper ballots and the way of counting the votes that you so eloquently discussed. Now, my question to you is this. To move this process forward, would you be willing to post draft legislative language for a paper ballot election reform generic state initiatives on whateverreallyhappened.com? Maybe some of our Rivero's Rangers could, we've got a really smart audience out there. Maybe they could, email drafts to you.
Okay, well, first of all, my website is called What Really Happened, and yes, I would be willing to post the draft legislation as part of my permanent article on how to have honest elections. So just go ahead and send that on in.
Okay, so I don't, so hopefully a number of us can do that, and you've probably got lawyers out there who are really good at it, and if we get it out there, then the rest of us can go out there and put that stuff, see if we can get it rolling as state initiatives.
Well, I think basically what we need to do is work on getting Americans to stand up and say, we do not trust this current election system. What are you going to do about it? And at some point, we're going to have those electronic voting machines all need to be ground up and sent over to the metal recovery companies. But our election system is an absolute joke, and Donald Trump and we, the American people, and the independent media managed to overcome it this last election. But you can absolutely believe that the vote riggers are just asking for more money from their masters, and they're going to be coming up with new ways to rig the election. And if Donald Trump does not decisively deal with the election fraud issue, he's going to lose Congress to the Democrats in 2018, and he's going to lose his re-election in 2020. Now, right now, Donald Trump is having to deal with all these alligators that are crawling out of that swamp he's trying to drain. But I would say probably no later than September of this year, we need to start mounting a massive, massive campaign to rouse the American people to demand an honest, verifiable, transparent election system, or start going on general strikes or tax strikes or whatever it's going to take to tell the government we're not going to go on doing business the way we're doing it now.
Well, how viable do you think us starting state initiatives in each state would be for paper ballot counting would be the most? Do you think that would be the most viable approach to go, or do you think there are other approaches that might work better?
I think this one's going to have to come right out of the grassroots because, like I said, in the context of people like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and John McCain, there's no law that says election fraud is confined to the presidential races, and there's no reason to conclude or to assume that we're not seeing it in the state races as well. And so there are probably people in these state governments who are holding their office also through election fraud, and they're going to be resisting any kind of a state initiative. So this is going to have to emerge right out of the grassroots itself, and it's just going to have to be a huge public outcry like the one that ended the war in Vietnam. And the American people are going to have to get really angry, and they're going to have to understand, until we get back honest elections, we have lost control of our nation.
Well, let's start with posting the legislative language and see where it goes from there.
Well, I'll post it as part of the article, but I don't think it's the best way to go. I think we need to get the American people angry enough to stand up and demand a whole new election system that we can trust that will represent the will of the people. Anyway, listen, we're going to have to let you go, George, because we're coming up on a commercial break, and when we come on back, more about Obamagate, more about CIA-gate. This stuff is huge. It is not going away anytime soon. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And getting on back to Obamagate, Robbie Mook was a staffer for the Hillary Clinton campaign. He's gone public saying it was common knowledge throughout the entire campaign that Donald Trump's campaign offices in Trump Tower had been bugged and information was being shared. And he's gone one step further and said that in addition to the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and who knows what all else, apparently the Obama administration was asking foreign governments to spy on Donald Trump and share the information with him. This goes back to the policies of Echelon or Five Eyes. Get a foreign government to spy on somebody and give you the information, and technically it's legal because you're not doing the spying. Now, more and more attention is being focused on people other than Donald Trump who were subjected to surveillance, including Michael Flynn, who at the time he was being bugged was a private citizen, and current Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who at the time of his bugging was an ordinary senator. Not that senators are ordinary, but you understand where I'm going with this. Lewandowski is out there saying that if, in fact, Obama bugged Jeff Sessions along with Trump, it is very, very disturbing, which is Washington, D.C. speak for, holy cow, this is going to be a real problem. Now, an ex-Department of Justice official is out there saying that one of the reasons they may have gone ahead with pressuring Sessions to step down from the investigation into the links between Trump and Russia, the timing may have been dictated by the fact that the secret Department of Justice slush fund was becoming exposed. And they wanted to give the media something to look at that wasn't. And the media is still playing those games. I mean, they're still focused on the Obamacare debate, and yes, the Obamacare debate is important, but they're basically focusing on that, and they're only giving lip service to CIA-gate and Obamagate so their audiences don't call up and say, why aren't you covering this? But they're definitely trying to pull the focus away from these two very damaging scandals, either one of which delegitimizes the government itself. Now, moving on here. By the way, have you noticed this weird double standard when it was the Democrats screaming that Trump is cooperating with the Russians, Trump is cooperating with the Russians, and we were saying, where's the proof? And they'd say, we don't need the proof, we just know it, just take our word for it. And now all of a sudden, when the story is Obama bugging Donald Trump, what do we get from the corporate media? Show us the proof. We demand to see the proof. We won't, we got to have the proof here. Little bit of a hypocrisy and double standard there, but then if the corporate media didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. Now, Lindsey Graham is trying to get ahead of this crisis, and he's already announced that he is ready to subpoena all of the intelligence agencies for the evidence that would prove that Obama was bugging the Trump campaign. This is on an interview on CNN. And obviously that information needs to get on out there, but I'm very concerned that Lindsey Graham, who is not a friend of Donald Trump, is trying to gain control of the evidence. Because one very common tactic that the government will have is they'll launch a big investigation to block all other investigations from moving forward. A classic example would be when the Warren Commission was created to investigate the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Now, when that happened, there actually was no federal law regarding the murder of the president. Technically, Texas had jurisdiction to investigate the crime. But the people in Texas were not under control of the assassins completely. And so the Warren Commission was formed, and they grabbed all of the evidence and took it to Washington, D.C., and they were in control of it. Of course, in this day and age of the Internet and computers, copies are easily made and disseminated, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get in control of the story by controlling the investigation here. But it is ugly. Now, people are beginning to realize that James Comey, it was clearly a mistake for Donald Trump to keep him on, and Donald Trump does have the authority to fire him, but Comey is out there, and he's very skilled at using rumor, innuendo, and leaks to remind the powerful he cannot be ignored, and he seems to be enjoying it as much as J. Edgar Hoover himself did. So he's a very dangerous man to the nation right now. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I'm hearing from our control room at Republic Broadcasting, they are being deluged with complaints, and I'm getting a lot of emails from people who are unable to access the broadcast streams and apparently can't even get to the RBN website. And fingers are pointing all over the place. But it looks like the evil ones are really, really scared that you, the American people, are finally waking up to this real-life matrix you've spent your entire life in, and they're panicking. You can just smell the panic out there right now. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call from Bill in Philadelphia. Aloha, Bill. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. This deep Vault 7, this stuff is exciting. I've never had so much fun in all my life. I was kind of worried in the beginning that I knew all the stuff was out there, and I figured, Donald was going to be this big police state guy and use this stuff. So I'm glad that all this stuff is actually happening in the beginning of his presidency, so he may maybe be able to...
well, you're jumping to a conclusion here because there was a very troubling incident at the White House press briefing earlier today. I mean, obviously Donald Trump wants a full investigation into Obama's bugging of his campaign, but at the same time, Sean Spicer came down very hard on WikiLeaks and Assange and said that this leaking of the CIA information was a very, very bad thing. And so it may very well be that Trump, or at least those immediately around him, don't want this capability to go away because it gives them an extraordinary amount of power over the American people and foreign governments. However, it may not be up to them anymore because WikiLeaks is handing out the actual software tools to tech companies all over the world so that they can start building in safeguards against these CIA intrusions. So the capability is going to go away anyway, regardless of what Trump wants. Trump may also be coming down hard on the WikiLeaks CIA document dump because he realizes a scandal of this magnitude could delegitimize the entire government. When those people broke into the FBI office and stole the COINTELPRO documents and made them public, it caused most Americans to question the legitimacy of their government back then. We're talking in the 1970s, where this idea that the FBI was engaging in this behavior to suppress our constitutional right to freedom of speech and open debate, and it really caused a lot of people to look at the government in Washington, D.C. as possibly not being legitimate, which forced Congress to hold hearings at which the FBI said, yes, our bad, we promise we won't do it again, and then, of course, they immediately went back to doing it again.
Yeah, I agree. A side question. You know how when ISIS does something, they say ISIS claimed responsibility. How do they know that? What does ISIS call into some type of the bat phone or something? Say, hey,
they send a candygram.
Candygram.
Yeah, or a singing telegram. Hi, we're ISIS. We did it. Anything else?
No, I just. Do you have any idea on how that's done, or they just make it up?
They have these propaganda sites like Rita Katz's Site Intelligence Group, and they're the ones who always say, "Oh yes, we got a communication from ISIS that says yes, we did all of this stuff." But Site Intelligence and Memory and all these others, they're basically propaganda operations. It's amazing how much of your tax money the government is spending to lie to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And I would like to also point out that nowhere in the Constitution is the government allowed to lie to you, let alone make you pay for it all. All right. We're getting word that Trump is looking at nominating Richard Grenell for ambassador to NATO. This is being greeted with mixed feelings in a lot of different circles about that one. This one, I promise you, this is the next story. This is not a sick joke. Barack Obama is being awarded the John F. Kennedy Medal of Courage after 8 years of war and drone bombings and bugging Donald Trump's office and all the rest of that. And supposedly he's being given this award for his efforts at promoting democratic principles in the face of severe political opposition by members of Congress and a divided national political body. Obama is not promoting democratic principles. Not when he supports election fraud, not when he goes into other countries and overthrows their democratically elected leaders to install a junta, such as happened in, well, pick any one of a country, Ukraine, Syria, Libya, Yemen. John F. Kennedy is spinning in his grave. Should put a belt on him, hook it to a generator, we'd solve the energy crisis. We're going to take another phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Mike, I was at the gym earlier, and I saw that Spicer, giving it rendition against WikiLeaks. I've called you before. I think I told you I don't like Spicer. I didn't like him from the get-go. I think he's basically one of the Ryan boys, one of the mainstream Republicans. But I'm starting to get very, very upset about Trump more and more because he should be happy as a pig and you-know-what right now. After all, the same deep state that was monitoring him, tapping his phone, doing all the stuff they shouldn't be doing. WikiLeaks also exposed what was going on with Hillary. And he's going to turn on them, or at least he's going to have Spicer turn on them. At least.
Well, you raise a good point there. You raise a good point there because looking at Spicer's statements, he didn't actually indicate that it was official White House policy. It was certainly expressed as being his opinion, but he's not supposed to have a personal opinion in that room. He's supposed to be the voice of Donald Trump. And as Donald Trump is being kept busy with all these alligators and all this other harassment against him, we have to realize that a lot of what's coming out of the White House may not be originating with Donald Trump, but may be originating with the Chief of Staff and even Sean Spicer. And it's very, very hard to really get to the root of the matter. I'm waiting to see what Trump tweets about the CIA leak before I get too hard on him. But if he's deciding that he wants to keep that infrastructure for his own use, that is a very troubling indication. And at this point, if Trump really is not going to reverse the course of this nation, then the only possible eventual outcome is we're going to see this nation collapse the way the Soviet Union did.
I mean, he's turning on the very people that support him. Now, what he needs to do, if it's people like Spicer talking their own, and that seems to be the case possibly with Flynn also. When Spicer said Flynn lied to Pence, well, he's got to get control of these people. He's got to get them out. He's got to get Coney out. He's got to get all these.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. Trump was trying to be, the noble, magnanimous in victory, and very clearly it was a mistake to keep any of the Obama holdovers. He should have just scraped out the White House in the executive office building and started from scratch.
But these aren't just Obama holdouts. These are mainstream Republicans like Priebus and all.
But they're also the people who didn't want Trump to run. They were pushing Ted Cruz, even though Cruz couldn't legally be president of the United States of America. And but Trump is going to have to take a hard line. What he's got right now with this bugging story is he's got a chance to regain the initiative and push forward, and he needs to push forward very hard, which is why they're still trying to throw roadblocks in his way. If Trump is really on board, if Trump is really on board with this idea of protecting the CIA against WikiLeaks, that to me says he's not going to be president for more than one term, if he even lasts that long.
What people have to do too is you can't. He tweets and you can tweet back at him. Start getting together and tweeting and telling him leave WikiLeaks alone, leave Assange. As a matter of fact, give him a complete pardon. Give Ed Snowden a complete pardon.
I don't know that Trump actually reads the tweets that go back to him, except from a few select individuals. I mean, I tweet a lot of stuff out myself. I don't look at the replies. I simply don't have the time. And I think probably the same is true of Donald Trump. But the part that Donald Trump is missing is the CIA is his mortal enemy because of what they've been doing with the Clintons and the Bushes going back to the 1980s in Arkansas, gun running and drug running. And they are afraid that Donald Trump could bring that out into the open and bring it crashing down. And Trump needs to realize the CIA is not on his side, just like the CIA was the enemy of John F. Kennedy.
Right, and the FBI isn't much better either.
No.
And I love the way they go on Fox News. You know, that again, I was watching this from at the gym, because normally I don't even bother with Fox News at home. When they go on Fox News and say how they're protecting the country, and the Fox News neocons and out and out dopes, useful idiots, the airheads, the pretty blonde airheads. They go and don't even ask questions when they come on. They just accept whatever some X8.
Well, that's what the corporate media is paid to do, is basically act like they're an impartial provider of information when they're absolutely not. Certainly, and again, go back to that article. Rivero challenges the NSA. All of this spying by the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI cannot actually stop real terrorists or real criminals, because it's very easy to come up with your own forms of encryption they cannot break. That is just absolutely the reality.
I'm also very disturbed about having those 300 Marines now going in, and there was more that there were Rangers that went in there too. Libya. They don't belong in Libya.
Syria. You're thinking Syria. You're thinking Syria. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, Mark, I'm going to let you go here because we've got a lot of news to cover. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now then, this is a big breaking story, and you are not going to see this on the corporate media. It turns out that FBI investigators have been able to recover the emails on Hillary Clinton's server that were not just deleted, but explicitly wiped with a special software tool that was supposed to overwrite the files. And they've been working on it, and as part of this Judicial Watch investigation, they have succeeded in recovering some of these emails that Hillary Clinton deleted. They have found 30 dealing with Benghazi. It doesn't even matter what's actually in the emails themselves. The fact that she erased them, tried to overwrite them, didn't turn them in when ordered to, proves she lied under oath. And now you know why Hillary and the liberal Democrats and basically that whole corrupt machine, they're in a panic. They're losing on virtually every front out there. And they're grasping at straws to try and prolong their power, including tinkering with RBN's computers, tinkering with my computers. And that caller is absolutely right. Before Donald Trump starts protecting the CIA's snooping technology, he'd better stand back and realize that that same technology was what was being used to bug his campaign headquarters. Now, let's get on to John McCain, because there's a growing concern there over his McCain Institute, whose avowed purpose is to combat human trafficking, especially that of children. And it turns out that the McCain Institute has brought in huge amounts of money, almost none of which has been used for its stated purposes. Instead, he's forwarded the money to the Arizona State University Foundation. And you know, if you're involved in something nefarious, and I'm not making any allegations about John McCain himself, but let's say that you are engaged in the business of sheep smuggling, okay? And there's a growing public outcry over sheep smuggling, and you are a sheep smuggler. How are you going to derail this? Well, you set up a foundation that says, we are going to fight sheep smuggling, send us all your donations. And that way you starve other organizations that might legitimately be looking at the problem of sheep smuggling of revenue streams, because you've got it all because of your star power as a celebrity or a politician or both. But there's something very weird going on over there. And it's starting to bubble to the surface, this whole pedophile scandal. Apparently there was a major pedophile bust in Slovenia. This is all over the world. It's not just Trump's campaign here in the United States of America. They got 17 people, raided their home. Apparently they were dealing in child porn. They didn't actually find any child victims who were at risk. Over in Reno, a 45-year-old man has been sentenced to 39 life sentences after being found guilty of 39 counts of child sexual abuse. This is one of the largest child sexual abuse trials ever in Washoe County. And Valentin Corrales was found guilty of the 39 counts. He's going away to jail. 39 life sentences. But with time off for good behavior, he'll be eligible for parole in 2145. Okay, let's take a phone call here. Pamela in Milwaukee, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, wow, you got to me so quickly. I was trying to look up. I just wanted to thank you for your show, by the way. Amazing, helpful, very intelligent.
Thank you.
Such a refreshing change. But you made a comment which I feel I'd love it to be true, that our business, the business of our government is not to lie to us, but as has been pointed out by many wonderful alternative media folks, there was an executive order signed, I believe it was like Christmas Eve of 2011, where some bill was overturned, and this executive order did make it legal for the U.S. government to publish propaganda in the U.S.
Okay, well, you've hit a small problem, and that is the fact that under the United States Supreme Court ruling Marbury versus Madison, laws repugnant to the Constitution are automatically null and void, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Any law that they pass that says we can lie to you is automatically null and void, and we have a right to say that law is not valid. You do not have a right to lie to me. If you're lying to me, you are not a legitimate government, and that is the hue and cry the American people need to take up right now. This is not a legitimate government. Pamela, thanks an awful lot. We're going to have to let you go and take a break for commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and I want to respond to that last caller because I do get a lot of emails saying, well, you know, the president signed an executive order and the Congress passed a law that says, yes, they can slap us across the face with a wet fish, and it's now the law of the land. Well, no, not if the Constitution says they're not allowed to do it. And you need to remember the two most important amendments in the Bill of Rights are the 9th and the 10th. The 9th Amendment says if an authority and power is not specifically assigned to the government in the Constitution, then it reverts to the people. They're not allowed to just create new powers out of thin air. And the 10th Amendment says that anything that is not given to the government reverts to the American people and to the separate states. Just because something is a law does not mean it's good. Look at all the stuff the Nazis supposedly did in World War II. That was the letter of the law. Look at what Stalin did in Russia. That was the letter of the law. When we had slavery in this country, that was the letter of the law. When they locked up all the Japanese in those internment camps in World War II, that was the letter of the law. We know it wasn't right. And sometimes you have to make a decision between doing what is the law and doing what is right, which is, by the way, why we have juries in our courtrooms. And most people don't realize the highest authority in that courtroom is not the judge, it is that jury. Because they have an authority to refuse to convict somebody on a law they think is bad or unjust or unfairly applied. Unfortunately, people who are trying to educate the public about their rights as jurors are now being thrown in jail because they want to reduce the jury to a box full of department store clothing dummies who simply nod and rubber stamp whatever the prosecutors and the judges want to say. We're going to grab a real quick phone call. Nancy in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, love the show. I just wanted to call and let you know that in New Jersey, we've been getting flyers in every household for human trafficking, and the state Senate and Assembly has bills that are proposed, and it says one other state, and they're proposing this in all 50 states, and it's a pretty shocking flyer. It's got, pictures on it that, anybody that has no idea this is going on, which I would think is a lot of people. And then they even have a toll-free hotline if you identified, a criminal or a child that might be having problems. So this was pretty positive.
Yeah, it is a real problem, and it does need to be dealt with. Unfortunately, we also have to be careful we don't get into a witch hunt hysteria where everybody is seeing child molesters everywhere, because sometimes grown-ups will pay attention to children just out of a parental instinct or maternal or paternal instinct. And you have to be careful that somebody doesn't misconstrue it, especially somebody who's PC, and say, oh, that guy gave the kid a science toy. There must be some nefarious purpose. He's trying to do whatever. So we have to walk a very fine line between finding the actually guilty and making sure the innocent are not harmed. Thank you for the call, Nancy. We're going to take a short break for station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and hour number 2. The phone lines are open. Still trying to deal with all this situation where apparently in many areas of the country, people are not able to access the Republic Broadcasting website or the Republic Broadcasting streaming players, and it appears to be happening at the DNS level, meaning somebody's hacked into the DNS lookup tables and erased the entries for Republic Broadcasting so that you cannot find them. And we're trying to find a solution for that. But again, this is an indication of just how scared the current political establishment is, that the American people are waking up. They've taken the red pill. As a matter of fact, they're hacking my web server, even as we speak. All right, let's grab a phone call. Sherry in Fredericksburg, Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, this is kind of a frivolous question, but the last time you reminded us about the 9th and 10th Amendment and the rights of the people and pointed out the rights of the people, I think it was, and the government doesn't have the right to lie to us. This specifically was regarding something Nancy, if I'm not mistaken, something Nancy Pelosi responded to regarding Obamagate, saying, oh, whatever it was she said, this was the response you gave, reminding of us of our rights and how the government can't just lie to us. Well, that caller, Pamela, I'm just going to say, I know this isn't true, but I just thought it was really weird how she sounded just like Nancy Pelosi to me.
Now, you're being cruel. Like you're being so cruel here. You're being so cruel.
I thought, if she really wants to get out there and spread the word and punctuate her point of view, why not? But I'm just gonna say that was kind of interesting because I wasn't paying attention and I heard this voice. I said, "Gee, that sounds like Nancy Pelosi." And then I got closer to the radio, and I heard, your response to what she said. I said, the last time he was talking about that was when she responded to something she said on TV about how, we're wrong to accuse, to accuse or bring forth this jury thing and do something about the Obama, how we don't have the right. And I just thought,
Yeah, let me just chime in here a little bit. I mean, the government can obviously write any law that it thinks it needs to convince you to go along with whatever it is they want to do. Okay, and they can pass a law that says it's okay for us to propagandize you. They cannot pass a law that requires us to believe them. That really is what it comes down to, and we all know they're lying and they're full of USDA choice bovine excrement, and that is just the ugly reality there, that we don't have to listen to them anymore. And that, too, is another symptom that we saw in the former Soviet Union just before it fell apart. The Soviet people just simply stopped listening to the government, the Politburo. They stopped reading and trusting Pravda and Izvestia, and it became a government that was simply unable to function, and it fell apart. And the same thing is happening here today.
That's what I wanted you to say. That's what I wanted to bring out, to hear it all again, because I think this is very important. And it just was kind of weird. All right, I'm finished.
All right, well, thank you very much for the phone call here, and we're going to let you go. Now then, alarming development. The fix is in. This House committee, this House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Open Hearings on Russian Active Measures, has a very obvious problem, because the only technical experts scheduled to testify are all from CrowdStrike. which is a firm that works for the Democratic National Committee and has been the source about all this Russian hacking of the 2016 election. Remember when they first came on out and said the DNC computers were hacked, and the FBI said, let us check, and they said, no, we've got an expert here from CrowdStrike. They're loading this up so that they can go on in and make a whole bunch of baseless accusations and present them to you as facts you should never, ever, ever dare question, because after all, it's coming from the House of Representatives. Frankly, anything coming from the House of Representatives should be doubted and dismissed immediately, unless proof is shown to back up their assertions. See, in a lot of ways, government actually operates like a religion. It is dependent on the blind faith and obedience of you, the acolytes, that you will automatically believe what is being preached at you, that you will automatically accept what they tell you as absolute gospel truth. And right now, they're dealing with a problem of growing heresy among the population, of a refusal to believe. And the more they lie, the worse it gets. And they're trapped because they can't start telling the truth. Can they? They can't start telling the truth any more than the corporate media can. So everybody's just going to play this out until the whole system starts coming apart. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates just now rejoining our network. Interesting little story out of Rolling Stones. This is from Matt Taibbi, who's a very excellent writer. And he's sending out a warning. Why the Russia story is a minefield for Democrats and the media. And he's reminding us all that despite all the smear jobs and rumors and innuendo, the former director of national intelligence, on January 20th, the last day he was in office, said there was no evidence of collusion between Donald Trump's campaign and the government of Vladimir Putin's Russia. And this is a confirmation of the statement made by the FBI in November, just before the election, that on the basis of all this bugging of Trump's tower, they had found zero evidence. So right now they're blowing smoke out there. They're blowing smoke to say, Russia, Trump, Trump, Russia. Pay no attention to all this other stuff over here. Just listen to us and believe, and you will go to heaven. And if you don't believe us, you will go to the dark places. It's a desperate, desperate gamble. And interestingly enough, back in the 1950s and 1960s, it would have worked, because back then Americans still trusted their government, still trusted the corporate media. Those days are gone. Every single independent poll out there is showing trust in the corporate media, trust in the government is at an all-time record low. Never before in the 200-plus year history of this country have the American people so distrusted their government. And the government did it to themselves, and I have no sympathy for them, because I will not live under a government that lies to me. Better no government at all than a government that lies to me. I will have truthful government, or I will have no government at all. Story coming out of IntelliHub.com, all the fake news that's fit to print, and it too is commenting on the decline of the corporate media, the abandonment of the basic principles of journalism by the corporate media to simply rush on out there and just, catapult the propaganda forward, as George Bush said, because that's really their job. The U.S. government has privatized the Ministry of Propaganda, and it's called CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, NPR, Fox News, to a lesser extent. But that's what they're there for. You, the American people, are the most lied to people on the face of planet Earth. And you need to start realizing that and accepting it before you can chart your way forward. Now, as you know, we had this Women's Day thing where the women stayed home from their jobs and refused to do housework and all this other stuff. And it was a little bit of a debacle. They've tried this before. They're not getting any traction. And this is more of that divide and conquer, trying to keep fanning men and women against each other to keep them under control and possibly set the stage for another liberal Democrat to run in 2020. or for every liberal Democrat who's running for Congress next year. Hillary Clinton came on out with a message urging followers to resist, in her Women's Day message, resist the government. Stand up and resist the government. She's right on the edge of sedition there. And they don't really have a lot of bright stars there besides Hillary Clinton, because apparently Nalini Stamp from the Working Families Party came on out with a tweet. This is a direct quote. Women birth half the population, and we are half the population. So, Nalini, where do you think the other half of the population came from? Storks? The Cabbage Patch? Cloning? Illegal immigration? Possible. But I mean, that's the degree of ridiculousness of all this PC speech out there. Now, it turns out that billionaire George Soros, the Dark Lord of the universe, actually ponied up $246 million to 100 groups behind the Day Without a Woman protest. $246 million, which I think probably now qualifies as the world's most expensive flop. Although Matt Damon's Great Wall is certainly going to be a close second by the time they're done with the red ink on that one here. Now, as you know, there's already talk of Hillary Clinton running for mayor of New York. There have been posters already put up in various locations trying to trial bubble, trying to get a read, and the read is not good. Rasmussen did a poll showing that 60% of likely voters, actually 58% of likely voters, do not want to see Hillary on that ballot. Only 23% of the respondents said Hillary should run. And the rest were just not really sure about what was going on here. Let's take a phone call. Fran in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. You know, I was reflecting the other day about all of this mega sensitivity that people are going through, and the division of the superficial race versus race, men versus women, Democrat, Republican. It's just, I think, and I'm not sure, but I think I understand the increasing sensitivity, but what I don't understand is how many people don't understand that the dark, you know, the shadows, whoever, are manipulating their increasing sensitivity and using them to, basically, it's the old divide and conquer.
You're absolutely right. I mean, all things that we find offensive are learned. Okay, when you are looking at a brand newborn baby, they're not offended by anything. They're not offended by nudity. They're not offended by certain colored skin. They're not offended by certain lifestyles. They're not offended by words. It's all learned behavior in order to control you. And part of the liberal Democrats' political strategy is to cultivate a sense of victimhood, where everybody feels they're being victimized by some imagined oppressor, and they will cling to the liberal Democrat political platform to be saved from this imaginary hobgoblin who's out there. And as a result, we have literally created a huge segment of our population whose entire sense of self-worth rests on always finding something to be offended about. And of course, it is a no-win situation, because you can never have a totally offensive-free environment unless you're locked in a rubber room over at the insane asylum. And even then, they'll probably find something to complain about over there, like the food. But they're being cultivated to be complainers and whiners and victims, rather than Americans who are standing up on their own 2 feet, figuring out things for themselves and deciding where they want their country to go.
And boy, are we in trouble.
No, because it's fading. It's starting to burn out. And they've overused it. Anytime you have something that's shocking and you overuse it, you remove the shock value. 20, 30 years ago, if somebody screamed, "You're an anti-Semite," "Oh, please, take it back. Here's money. Here's my vote. Anything." And today, Israel has so overplayed that they say, oh, you're an anti-Semite. And everybody goes, yeah, okay. They don't care anymore. They don't care anymore about this stuff. And the same thing with the PC out there. I mean, look how fast that transgender bathroom thing burned on out. They overused that one. And they're out there just trying to throw more and more things out there to see what they can find traction with. And the more they throw out there, the more everybody's saying, look at all this accumulated nonsense. And it is a turnoff.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for taking my call, Michael.
You're welcome.
So, aloha nui nui.
Aloha nui nui nui. All right, let's turn over to the war zones. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Turning to Syria, it looks like Israel and Turkey are going to be working together, poised to take the Syrian buffer zone, which is still technically supposed to be part of Syria, but they're going to go ahead and grab it the way Israel has grabbed the Golan and is already selling the oil and gas out from underneath it, even though technically under international law it is still Syrian property. Now apparently the Turkish military, the Free Syria Army, the U.S.-backed rebels, are capturing and mistreating Syrian soldiers. And it seems to be pointing to a coming confrontation between Syria and Turkey. We've been seeing Turkey trying to push into not just the Kurdish areas in Syria, but into Syria itself. Now, Donald Trump is sending in troops and tanks, and we're not exactly sure what his particular agenda is or how much of the agenda is actually under his control. One of the real problems we have is that with Trump occupied dealing with the alligators crawling out of that swamp, he is probably delegating a lot of policy to his aides and his staff. And they may be doing things that Trump himself doesn't agree with. During the heyday of the Merovingian kings, they actually had a phrase for them, the enfeebled kings, because they were so surrounded by administrators that were making decisions on behalf of the crown that the crown itself actually lost control of the country. And Trump may be dealing with the same thing. But to be, boy, they are really attacking my server. These people are so terrified right now. All right, so with Trump going into Syria, there is a problem. He doesn't have authorization of the Congress. He doesn't have authorization of the United Nations. He doesn't have the authorization of the government of Syria. In short, Trump sending troops and arms into Syria is illegal under 3 different sets of rules. Now, apparently, NATO is starting to rattle their sabers over Serbia. And as a result, Putin has sent Serbia MiG-29s to send a clear message saying, this should stop. This should stop right now. Now, we mentioned yesterday that Poroshenko is trying to get The Hague to arrest Vladimir Putin, and now we're basically getting a look into the charges. Kiev is accusing Moscow of violating 2 conventions, financing terrorism and racial discrimination. But experts are saying this is a frivolous nuisance lawsuit. It's doomed to fail. And Poroshenko was doing it so the corporate media can say, oh, see, Russia's being charged in the International Criminal Court. More propaganda, more grist for the mill. Let's see. Apparently, the U.S. government has been spending millions of your taxpayer dollars to destabilize the democratically elected center-right government in Macedonia by colluding with George Soros. This was discovered by Judicial Watch. Now, we know Macedonia has just gone on out and started to shut down Soros non-governmental organizations. But here's the important point. I always wondered how it was Soros never seems to run out of money the way he throws it around on these various globalist leftist causes. And apparently, courtesy of the United States government, there is a siphon running from your wallets directly into Soros' wallets. And that's the reason he never seems to run out of money. Very alarming, very corrupt, still out there playing his games. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Michael. Obviously Soros has been part of these color revolutions all over the world, and he's definitely acting on the CIA and probably the Mossad's behalf, and thus his money and thus his immunity from any blowback so far. But with guys like Soros, Mike, I wanted to make the point that Soros and a couple months back when Obama was saying that he wanted to cut a deal with the Russians in Syria, and then the Pentagon went and apparently beyond Obama's control bombed the Syrian army situation, killed a lot of Syrian soldiers, and then you have the intelligence apparatus, which one rogue element may have leaked stuff about Hillary. Another element that may not have been rogue, but actually directed by a criminal president, Obama, was bugging and leaking stuff on a candidate for the president, Trump. But they have all this information, and you just got to wonder, really, just how governable, and if this country really can be governed.
I would answer firmly at this point, no. The powers that be are locked in a battle with each other and with the truth movement, and all you need to do is look around this country at the crumbling roads, the collapsing bridges, the almost collapsing dams, and realize they're not running the country. They're looting it, they're plundering it, they're grabbing tremendous wealth to themselves through all of this nonsense, but they're not actually running the country. And the American people need to stand up and realize that what we call a government is just a bunch of usurpers who have taken over the place, and they're looting it. It's an organized crime family, and it does involve all of these intelligence agencies and all of these long-time corrupt politicians and the corporate media. And it is a stark lesson as to what happens when we allow too much money to concentrate in too few hands. Inevitably, they're going to start thinking that they are gods incarnate and start doing whatever they feel like doing.
You wonder, I wonder, Mike, sometimes if things continue as they are, with people like Soros and Black Lives Matter and Obama with his 30,000 man, corruptly funded Justice Department, corruption-funded organizations he's assumed command of, and the intel agencies and everything else, if the only way out is martial law, and that would be a disaster in and of itself.
Yeah, at this point, it would be very dangerous for the government to try and establish martial law because people will go along with the declaration of national emergency and martial law if they believe in their hearts of hearts it's absolutely necessary to preserve the nation and its people. But people are not going to go along with the declaration of national emergency and martial law when they realize it is simply a corrupt power structure preserving itself.
Well, so Mike, do you think that down the road, if things become increasingly precarious, really, with the situation with the government and the governability of the country and Trump and all that, if the public may come to the conclusion that maybe that's what's necessary, or what do you think?
I don't think we'll have to wait for the public to do anything, and I absolutely discourage any kind of an armed uprising because the government is really very good at killing people, and they will have absolutely no hesitation to kill 25% of the American people if it'll guarantee the surviving 75% are loyal slaves. But right now, given that Trump is not able to get control of this country and change its course, at this point I'm left to conclude we're just going to have to sit back and mark time. We're headed for a Soviet Union-style collapse in this country.
But I agree with you in what you're saying about government. Just the only thing that it does well is murder people. But I'm saying at some point, will this place become so anarchic and so chaotic that the people might not oppose martial law somewhere down the line?
I don't think so, because I don't see this country descending into anarchy what I see it doing is breaking up, where communities start taking care of their own needs, states go back to being independent entities, the only rioting in the streets are the hired actors working for George Soros. Peter, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. I'm getting emails now that AT&T is now blocking domains. So the deep state is clearly panicking. There's another article we had on the website today that apparently YouTube is now taking it upon themselves to delete videos from your favorite playlist that they don't think that you should go back and look at again. Really, we know what's best for you. Alrighty, finishing up on the international news here. Israel has passed a new law denying entry to any foreigners who are known to support the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And it's interpreted as indicating that the BDS movement is gaining strength and Israel is panicking. In fact, I would say probably panic is the current lifestyle of most of the world's imperial governments at this particular point. Now, we've been talking about the F-35 and what an absolute economic disaster it is and how crippled it is. And there was this interesting little story that came out from the Daily Mail on how the F-35B finally fires its guns in the air. And they're focusing the story on a Gatling gun pod attached to the underside of the F-35 that can fire 55 rounds per second. But it does go on to say it can't actually aim at a target just yet. Here's where it gets interesting. The F-35 has an internal cannon. It's located in the left wing root. We even put up a link to a video showing how it's supposed to operate. It's a ground test. They can't get it to work. The software is still a year away, and it vibrates so badly its accuracy is actually quite poor, and it's stressing the airframe in ways they were not expecting. So their solution is to glue another gun to the outside of this already overloaded, bloated aircraft that is so underpowered and so overweight it can be beaten in a classic dogfight by 70s vintage warplanes. This reminds me about another weapons debacle that happened in the years, well, about Vietnam era, having to do with the F-4. And when the F-4 was originally designed, it was designed without an onboard cannon, because the doctrine at that point was the missiles were so wonderful that all air-to-air combat was going to be fought just with missiles. And it proved to be a disaster. The kill ratio fell to just 3-to-1, whereas with an onboard gun previously it had been 12-to-1. And so the government basically came up with what they called the G-pod, which was an air-to-air cannon in a pod that attached onto the belly. So this is how they just keep on doing it, patch it, make it work, add things onto it, spend more money. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Not much, Michael. Hey, it was kind of a killjoy to hear that Trump may be standing with the CIA and against WikiLeaks, and I hope that that's not the case, because on his inaugural address, he said that the people do own the government, and we do. And there's no place for secrecy and blackmail.
Well, there's no place for a government that refuses to abide by the original contract with America, which is that Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And if a government is not fully in compliance with that Constitution and that Bill of Rights, then it's not a legal, legitimate government of this land. And again, I want to go on back and look at this press conference here, because it's not clear whether Sean Spicer was actually speaking on behalf of Donald Trump or if he was expressing his own personal opinion that the WikiLeaks exposures represented a bad thing. And of course, leaks are good for democracy and freedom. In fact, leaks are essential to democracy and freedom. And only those who hate democracy and freedom come down hard on leaks. Certainly we saw a lot of that going on during the Obama administration.
Yes, and I would also think that if, let's say, for example, WikiLeaks keeps releasing the Vault 7 documents and emails and such, and even if Trump denounces them, I believe it will be the people's it will be the people of the United States and of the world that decide, you know what, we don't care what Trump thinks.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be decided in the court of public opinion, and if Trump genuinely is siding with the CIA on this, I think he's going to alienate a lot of his support that put him in that Oval Office this last year, and that will make him a one-term president.
That's right. Well, that would be unfortunate for us, but we need to make sure that we, the people, actually govern our country, and it can't be governed by some secret society.
No, it absolutely cannot be. Remember John F. Kennedy's speech about secret societies? What a warning!
Right.
Yeah, what a warning he put on out there.
That's right. And actually, JFK mentioned the press. That secret society speech talked about how the press isn't really telling the real news. And I mean, that was 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Well, I mean, we certainly know how, looking back, we know how the corporate media covered up the real circumstances of his assassination. And I remember one of the events which really woke me up was I had saved all those newspapers and magazines from the Kennedy assassination, and I'd looked at them and just, you know, it reinforced the official story. And then following Jim Garrison's case against Clay Shaw, I went back and I looked at this One Post magazine and instantly saw all the problems with the official story. A photo showing Lee Harvey Oswald at street level the moment Kennedy grabs his throat. A photo that was taken to make it look like the magic bullet theory was plausible that clearly was not taken from inside the book depository, and so forth and so on. So yes, even back then. And you need to understand that following World War II, the United States, especially its intelligence services, adopted a lot of what had worked under the Nazis. And through Operation Paperclip, they brought a lot of those people over here. They gave them new identities, and they basically pumped their brains for how all of this stuff was made to work. And about that time is when the CIA created Operation Mockingbird, whose agenda was to put a CIA asset in control of all of the corporate media. And it only back then it only took about 20 people at the top of the networks, at the top of the big newspapers, and they had complete control over everything the American people were reading, seeing, hearing, or thinking. With the dawn of the Internet, of course, the dynamic has changed, and that's why they're in a panic right now, because people are turning away from that controlled corporate media. They're starting to ignore the online media that is obviously controlled and serving the government interest, and they're doing exactly what the Russian people did before the fall of the Soviet Union. They're finding out for themselves what's going on and who's telling the lies and who's telling the truth.
That's correct. And I wanted to give someone some press, if that's okay with you. Michael Trim, I listened to his program last night on YouTube, and he believes that the Vault 7 leaks will expose everything from JFK's assassination to the moon landing to 9/11 to everything, vaccines, everything, and he thinks that
you lost me at the
moon
landing. You lost me at the moon landing, and thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. And yes, my email box has been filled with people saying, well, you know, the Apollo moon landings were faked. Why aren't you talking about that? Because I'm not going to let you poison my well. That's why. And no, I'm not going to take any phone calls on Apollo, so put the handset down here. Now then, getting on back to the economic news, Ukraine has lost billions on the trade agreement with the EU just in the first year, because the trade rules have been set up where Ukraine is having to buy lots and lots of imported goods from the EU, but they're not able to export much to the European Union because of protectionism. And the EU has treated all their member nations the same way. We're going to control which way the trade goes. It's not really a free trade zone. There are a lot of trade restrictions, all of it designed to bring the wealth to those in control up in Brussels. This was a big reason why Yushchenko did not want to merge Ukraine with the European Union. He wanted to merge Ukraine with Russia, which is what prompted the U.S.-backed coup d'etat that brought the elected government of Kiev down, of Ukraine down, and installed a junta under Poroshenko, who is now in serious, serious trouble, and it looks like everybody's getting ready to drop him because he simply can't do what he was sent in there to do. Okay, now then, the German economy. We were talking yesterday about how German automakers are now in serious, serious trouble. They, like their American counterparts, are manufacturing a lot of cars. Nobody has the money to buy them. Germany's people are being taxed down to poverty, trying to prop up the rest of the European Union's failed economic states, not to mention paying for this incredible flood, this tsunami of refugees pouring across their borders. German factory orders are taking a dive, and all the quantitative easing isn't working any longer, and that is something not confined to Germany. All of these economies in the United States, all over Europe, are being propped up by the constant, instant creation of new money by their private central banks that's just poured all over to make it look like things are working, and they are not. Because when you don't have people who are working, when you don't have people who are going to the stores to buy things, you don't have a working economy. You have a legalized counterfeiting operation that is making themselves and their buddies rich enough to buy up all the hard assets of a country. That's not an economy. That's piracy. It's looting. It's plundering. It's pillage. Now, Iceland has become the first country in the world to make employers prove they are giving equal pay to women and men alike. This was in coordination with this International Women's Day. And the problem I have with that is simple. Equal pay for equal work, okay. But remember when they came out with affirmative action, and they rather than actually go out and say, is this person of color qualified to be in this person currently occupied by a white person, they simply established quotas and said, you will have this many of this race, this many of that race, this many, and so forth. And then later it was extended, you will have this many women and this many men. And it was simply easier to just start hiring on the quota system. And a lot of people who were less than qualified for jobs got hired into these positions. And the quality of product and services by the companies declined, and the companies have gotten into trouble because of it. Now, I'm all in favor of equal pay for equal work, but I think this mandating employers prove they're paying women the same as men is wide open to abuse if the women are not, in fact, producing the same volume and quality of work as their male counterparts. This is all turning into just socialist situation. And look how well that worked out over there in the former Soviet Union. Bank stocks took a tumble after Sean Spicer basically confirmed that Donald Trump is committed to restoring Glass-Steagall. And that really is a good thing. I think it is a very good thing that Glass-Steagall comes back. Because depositor banks, banks that take your money, should not be allowed to engage in high-risk speculative investment. The people who want to play that game form investment banks, where they put their own money in and they engage in these high-risk ventures, and sometimes they win and sometimes they lose. But you got to keep them separate. Now, back during the run-up to the Depression of the 1930s, there were no restrictions, where investment banks and depositor banks would merge, and they'd start using the depositors' money for high-risk speculative investment, and that's why so many people's savings accounts were wiped out in the crash of '29. And in the wake of that, Glass-Steagall was passed to protect bank savings account customers from the high-risk antics of Wall Street. When Travelers and Citicorp merged to form the Citigroup, it was a violation of Glass-Steagall. But rather than go on in and say this merger is illegal, Congress passed what they jokingly referred to as the Citigroup Relief Bill, which repealed Glass-Steagall. And then immediately Wall Street went back to the same bad behavior that led to the crash of '29. So, is this a government that's taking care of ordinary Americans and their savings accounts? No, it isn't. It absolutely is not. Now then, apparently Caliburger, which is a restaurant chain, they're notorious for having been sued by In-N-Out Burger for looking too much like In-N-Out Burger. they are now going to start installing burger flipping robots. And this is a bad move. I'm sure the burgers will be just fine. But collectively, your employees are collectively your customers. And the more you automate or offshore, the less business you're going to be doing. In the long run, businesses will suffer from this abandonment of the American worker. This is a bad idea. Now then. We've been talking about education being a fashion accessory, being a come-on to lure you into debt as young at life. And our current economy doesn't support so many college graduates. So there's a story over at Oraz.com. Right now there are 5,000 janitors in the United States with PhDs. Over 317,000 waiters and waitresses have college degrees. Over 8,000 of them doctoral or professional, along with 80,000 bartenders and over 18,000 parking lot attendants. All told, we have 17 million Americans with college degrees that are in jobs that do not actually require a college degree. And they are now on hook for that student loan debt. When you are being encouraged to go to college with promises of high-paying jobs that will allow you to pay back those student loans when you're done, you're being scammed. College education isn't about education anymore. It's just another quick buck scam being played on our young people. Okay, turning to the immigration situation, a little bit of good news. Illegal border crossings have now dropped 40% in Trump's first full month as president. Homeland Security is saying it's the lowest total in nearly 5 years because those people coming up from the South are starting to understand they're going to get sent back home. They're not going to get the free stuff. They're not going to be granted amnesty anymore. That's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing. Tim Pool is coming on back. Reporter was over there in Sweden saying Donald Trump is right about Sweden. A lot of terrible, terrible things are going on there. We are going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Hello, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Mary in Connecticut, thank you for being so patient and waiting. What is on your mind today?
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
I wanted to make a comment about the CIA, but first I wanted to talk about women and equal rights. I had heard or read, I used to get a lot of magazines, that the Clinton administration and Obama, the White House, they were the worst at paying equally to women. Okay?
Yeah, they were. So was Hillary's campaign. Apparently Hillary was paying her female staffers about 60% of what she was paying the male staffers.
Exactly. And also, the education, my daughter is a chiropractic doctor, and she graduated top of her class, and summa cum laude from Rutgers, and has a master's, and she's working as a lunch lady. Well, probably because she has to get this certification. You know, it costs hundreds of dollars, or maybe even into the thousands, just to get your certifications. You know, to practice. You have to get take yearly educational updates.
Yeah, and they'll loan you the money for that as well, I'm sure.
Probably. But anyhow, about the CIA, the other guy was talking about it, and I've seen interviews with Dr. Steve Pachenik. I think he was on yesterday or the day before on Alex Jones, and also of Mr. Steele, and they were both in the CIA and special ops. Dr. Pachenik said that many are recruited from military special ops and also military doctors that go in, and there are a great number who are loyal Americans and don't like seeing what's going on. So actually, they were actually helping WikiLeaks get certain things out that they knew were going on on the other hand, some of the CIA were, I guess, supporting the Clintons or what was going on. But there's
well, the Clintons are in a position to blackmail the CIA over its involvement with that Iran-Contra gun and drug running operation. I mean, the Iran-Contra hearings withheld the drug smuggling from the American people, but all Hillary has to say is, you know, I'll just go public and I'll confess that this was going on. And,
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are.
I don't think they like each other. It's just this whole system is held together with mutual blackmail.
But I think the thing is, when he said a few months ago that they were, I think right before, in the last week or two of the campaign, he was saying something about they were holding a soft coup. And I think that's what he means, is leaking out, helping to leak out a lot of information to hurt the Democrats of what all the stuff they've been doing.
Well, the soft coup is actually a term that's being applied for the actions against Donald Trump, and concern that it could turn into a hard coup if they're not able to do something to urge him out of office more peacefully. Anyway, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go for station identification. Be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to take a quick phone call from Frank in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, Mike, yes. Thank you so much for taking my phone call, and you are correct with jobs. I mean, a discount store opened up here last year. 8 jobs, over 200 applicants that came from the manager. But I honestly believe what they're looking to do in America, the next step, which Trump really headed it off, was to create the United States into a global, worldwide job marketplace. And what that means is that if there's an IT worker from India, bring them to America. If there's a computer programmer from China, bring them to America. If there's teachers from Central and South America, bring them to America. They can work on contract for any wage you want to work for. And what NAFTA, GATT, and the WTO done for production, the next phase was to remove every single job will be open to worldwide competition. This is where they were bringing us, and I honestly believe that. And this is why they were so much against Trump, these major corporations, because he was the one that stood for nationalism and stood up for the American worker. But that was the next phase, Michael, and that's what I honestly believe.
Well, see, here's where they didn't think it all the way through, because if you have a population that is working for just enough money to keep a roof over their head and buy food, then who are you going to sell the big screen TVs and the new cars and the ski boats and sports equipment and fancy clothing to? It doesn't work out. You cannot crush your consumer base down to the edge of absolute poverty and keep a consumer economy going along. It simply cannot work. And this whole week we've been talking about all these iconic retail corporations are going out of business. They're declaring bankruptcy. And it's not working. It can't be made to work. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a financial elite that still worships at the altar of Adam Smith. They hold it as an article of religious faith, that if they allow themselves to be personally greedy for themselves, that they are advancing the entire system as a whole. And John Nash, who won the Nobel Prize in Mathematics for his doctoral dissertation, showed how this was completely wrong. That if you were not taking into account the entire economic system in your planning, you were going to lock it up. But the money junkies love to be greedy. They love a justification to be greedy, and so they're not paying attention to what Nash is saying. They believe that by being greedy we're helping the entire system. Just like the Scientologists believe that when they go on out and commit these atrocious crimes against other people, that in the long run it makes planet Earth a better place.
Well, you're right, Michael. You're absolutely correct. But the way they view it, and I honestly believe, is that other markets will grow. In India, China, Central and South America, and they would just do what they've done to the American people. They'll hook them on credit, buy stuff they can't afford, bankrupt them, and then spread the credit around the globe. These people have no empathy at all.
Yeah, but what you're describing is a pyramid system, and pyramid systems simply cannot work. Whoever dreamed up this plan for the New World Order they were either drunk, smoking opium, or just serious, the product of Common Core education. We don't know. It cannot be made to work in the long run.
You're absolutely right, and the proof is in the pudding when you said the money junkies were addicted to money like a cocaine addict, and this is where the problem comes in. These people are not rational. They're addicted to money like a narcotics addict is addicted to drugs.
Exactly.
And this is where the problem comes in, Michael. Excellent program. Sorry for taking so much time, Michael, but keep up the good work.
I will just as long as I can here, and we're going to switch over to Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello there, Mike. I think back to that joke you had said about the money junkie in like the Betty Ford Clinic, and you throw $1 on the floor and he picks it up, he gets shot.
Wired to a spark coil. Yeah, I mean, it might come on down to that. And again, going back to that wonderful documentary, Inside Job, about the whole 2008 meltdown, and it won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Documentary, and then promptly disappeared from the American media. And they said researchers had actually wired up the brains of these traders and discovered that every time they had a big score, the part of the brain that lit up was exactly the same part of the brain that lights up when they're doing cocaine. And to nobody's surprise, there's a huge amount of cocaine abuse on Wall Street.
Yeah, Mike, I wanted to talk about the CIA, this whole scandal. The CIA came out today through their spokesperson saying that questioning Assange's integrity. Oh yeah, he's a real bastion of truth and integrity. So I have to hand it to Assange, because I don't know if the Ecuadorians have had the second round, the runoff of the presidential election, but one of the candidates, I don't know if he eventually won or if the second round hasn't happened yet. He basically said Assange can stay in the embassy, but he has to basically stop interfering in the U.S.'s politics. And look what they've done. I have to hand it to Assange, because this Ecuadorian, whoever wins, you mess with the CIA is going to get to tell the Ecuadorians, hey, this guy's got to go. He's got to leave that embassy.
Last I heard was that one of the candidates in the election was saying that if he won, he was going to revoke asylum status for Assange and kick him out of the embassy to be immediately arrested by whoever's going to arrest him. Frankly, I think Vladimir Putin should have allowed him amnesty inside Russia the way they did Edward Snowden. But
I think that candidate lost, though.
Okay, well, if that's the case, that they're going to let him stay inside the embassy if he stops releasing things, that may have simply said, we're going to release it all right now. Everything that we have saved up is going to get dumped right now, and let the chips fall where they may.
Exactly. And Trump, though, I didn't support. I heard one of the callers, and you had mentioned what Spicer had said today. But Trump set a bad pattern on the first day. He went to the CIA, I think his second day or first day, a full day as president, said, "I'm your biggest fan." I mean, that was a big mistake. Even Robert David Steele had said he should have never went there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It was a huge mistake, and that's because, unfortunately, and I'm going to say it again, too much of Donald Trump's worldview is based on what he's seen on TV and movies and the TV news. And even though he knows the TV news are liars toward him, he hasn't had time to do that mental exercise of going back and saying, what else is going on here? Trump needs one good advisor who knows the real history of what's been going on in this country for the last 30 years to set him straight, or he's just going to be another puppet, another enfeebled king.
Absolutely. You know, Mike, I didn't want to get off subject, but one thing I didn't like when Trump said in the State of the Union was, and I wanted to get your opinion, about faster approval of medications, from the FDA. And you had reported that 128,000 deaths from prescription medications, and Trump is calling for faster approval of medications.
Yeah, I didn't agree with that one either. But again, Donald Trump has learned from the TV news that vaccines are wonderful and vaccines are safe. And again, he needs somebody to tap him on the shoulder and say, you need to go back and look at the swine flu vaccine debacle of 1976 and what a huge embarrassment that was for President Gerald R. Ford.
But he did appoint Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right, to that
to the Vaccine Safety Commission, and that may indicate that he understands there's a problem. So he's placating the big pharmaceutical corporations But at the same time, again, I haven't seen a whole heck of a lot come out of this Vaccine Safety Commission and Robert Kennedy Jr. since the first few days. And maybe they're issuing statements, and certainly they're not going to get any coverage in the American corporate media. And now, of course, they're trying to block Natural News and other websites that deal with health and wellness issues from quoting these stories. So we're going to have to actually start hunting that stuff down again.
And lastly, Mike, and you've been saying this for the past few months, where is this Brian Pagliano? Where is this guy?
I think he sleeps with the fishes. He's sleeping with the fishes. Out there with Bruno Tattaglia and the other heads of the 5 families. He sleeps with the fishes.
He must. Mike, by the way, one more title for your autobiography in 20 years. How do you like this one? No Walk in the Park. What really happened in Fort Marcy Park and how it changed my life.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's an accurate title, but it's a little bit too long. Got to have brevity in the titles,
I'll work on it. All right, thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. All right, we're going to go to Joe in California, then we're going to close the phone lines for the rest of the show because I got a bunch of stuff to get to. Joe, what's on your mind today?
Mike, I've just been reading about Trump sending troops into Syria without Assad's requesting them, and I wonder, wouldn't that be the definition of an illegal order?
It's illegal on 3 fronts. Trump does not have the permission of Congress. Trump does not have an authorization from the United Nations, and Trump does not have the authorization of Bashar al-Assad. So that's 3 strikes and you're out. It's an illegal war.
So, a soldier could refuse.
Technically, yes, but of course, the military command tries to make it very, very difficult for soldiers to invoke that part of the Uniform Code of Military Justice that says you may refuse an illegal order. Remember what happened to Lieutenant Aaron Watada. We followed his story. We interviewed his father on the show, and absolutely, they espouse the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's been sort of a holy grail, a holy shrine since the end of the Nuremberg trials, and yet we have a government that very openly is ignoring that. And I think one of the things that really alarmed me about the militant direction of the United States is going all the way back to the George W. Bush administration, where U.S. ambassadors were going to all these countries to get these treaties signed saying that U.S. officials and military officers could not be arrested in their territory and sent to The Hague. And my observation at that time was simply, if you're trying to immunize yourself from war crimes trials, it's because you're planning on committing war crimes.
Why do you think Trump sent him?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to go back through his Twitter feed on that. It may be to discourage Turkey from going further into Syria and preventing that conflagration. But Trump really should have coordinated with Assad if that's what he's really up to. Certainly the deployment of the troops and tanks seems to indicate putting a wall between the Turkish and Syrian forces.
Oh, that might not be a bad thing.
No, it might not be a bad thing, but he still needed the permission of Assad and a UN resolution at the very least to do that.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Now, again, there is the War Powers Act that allows Trump to deploy troops for a limited period of time to deal with an emergency, and that may be what he is invoking to not have to go to Congress and get a declaration of war, which is going to be a bit of a trick because, as I understand it, Congress is only scheduled to work 8 days next month. So kind of hard to get them all together here. So we'll see what transpires. At this point, I'm really becoming a devoted follower of Trump's Twitter feed because that's the only way we're going to get the unvarnished view from Trump himself. And I'm not saying that Trump is being always truthful and honest on his Twitter feed, but better we're dealing with only one misstatement than layer upon layer of spin and deception and propaganda being poured all over him. There are way too many people trying to speak, to put words in Trump's mouth, way too many people trying to usurp and divert his authority and his policies. And again, it's another indication this nation is heading for a Soviet Union-style collapse. And at this point, if it's unavoidable, my feeling is the sooner it happens, the better for everybody involved. Now then, getting on back to the immigration problem in Europe. And again, back up in Sweden, where you're not allowed to talk about migrant crime because, after all, it's racist. No, it isn't. It's a crime. And here's a good example. Apparently, some migrants in Sweden sliced open a woman's throat, almost to the point of beheading her, then stabbed her husband to death, and they were laughing about it when the police showed up. It's amazing here. Hungary, I guess, has had enough of all of this nonsense. Hungary's parliament has just approved immediate deportation of all asylum seekers. And I think that's a smart thing to do. In the past, the way asylum would work is you would stay in your home country and you would apply for status as an asylum seeker, as a refugee. Then the government of the country you applied to would say yes, and then you would go on over. This whole idea of saying all these people are asylum seekers, they have to wait for their asylum inside the target country is complete nonsense. It's never been done that way before. And researchers are indicating that more than 90% of these people supposedly seeking asylum in Europe and the United States of America do not meet the legal qualifications for refugee status. It's just Soros and his globalists trying to blur us all together to make us forget who we really are so that we are easier to control. Now, somebody called into the show yesterday about this, and we got this update on the story. Here in Hawaii, apparently Hawaii has filed a challenge in federal court to Donald Trump's new executive order and refugees on migrant entry. Even though this state actually has a pretty poor track record on refugee resettlement. In fact, there was a local story in the local media about how one of the Hawaii teachers is saying she absolutely refuses to teach illegal immigrants. Now, here's an interesting little story on the other side. Apparently, illegal immigrants who are using bogus Social Security numbers to file tax returns for refunds are all of a sudden finding those refunds are being denied and the money is being diverted into this new program called VOICE, which is Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement Office. Because the fact is that these illegals and these refugees are committing crimes, Americans are being victimized, and at least Donald Trump is trying to address that issue. And not just say, well, you shouldn't complain about it because you're being racist. Illegal is not a race. That's important. There is a reverse migration taking place in Russia. And apparently over, or rather close to 150,000 Russians have returned to Russia from abroad this last year, 20% of them coming from the European Union, saying that what they thought they were going to find in these other countries, it isn't really there. What they thought they knew of these countries was what they saw on TV news coming out of those countries, and it's an absolute fraud. And so they're returning home because they're saying the economic opportunities for Russians are much better in Russia. A lot of the people who followed that refugee highway into Europe, once they got there and saw that they weren't going to get the free houses and free everything else, they've turned around and gone home. Actually, the cold winter has encouraged many of them to return to their homes. They're just not used to dealing with those kind of temperatures. Over in Spain, apparently the migrants at the border are becoming increasingly violent. They're starting to attack the border guards with iron bars. I think it's time to start issuing weapons. But the situation is spiraling out of control. Who benefits from all of this chaos? The New World Order. Now, as you know, we are coming up on some major elections in the European Union, which could well spell the end of the European Union. EU commissioners out there saying we need a hard line on Poland. Basically saying Hungary and Poland, those are in power. They're weakening the rule of law in these countries. That's a statement in the context that anyone wishing to break free of the European Union dictatorship is weakening the rule of law. They're not concerned about the law in those own countries. They're only concerned about the EU law, which is nobody ever leaves the European Union. The French ambassador to Japan has announced that he will refuse to serve under Marine Le Pen if she wins the presidential election. Frankly, at this point, I can imagine that the people of France, who are up to their baguettes in rioting migrants, don't care if he quits. He's just grandstanding. In any event, probably Marine Le Pen would replace him anyway. So he is now out of a job. Now, the Pope has weighed in on this now. He's now slamming the rise of evil populism in Western democracies. Apparently, the Pope sees a future of one planet, one government, one private central bank, and did I mention one religion? Mine. We'll be right back. And aloha America, welcome back to our show here. Now, over in Wisconsin, their Supreme Court has reaffirmed the right to carry a firearm on their buses. And they basically said that individuals in the city of Madison have the right to carry a firearm for protection on city buses. Now, that was always the norm for the entire state. Madison passed their own little local law saying, no, you may not carry a firearm for personal protection because all of our politicians are friends with all the criminals and we want to provide the criminals a safe working environment. Basically, the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that local officials cannot pass laws that are stricter than state law. So you're allowed to carry a gun for personal protection in Madison, Wisconsin as a whole, but you're still not allowed to purchase Kerrygold butter and cheese. Sometimes you look at government and it's just silly. It is just silly. Now then, we're going to talk about the 5 biggest anti-science fails of the progressive left. This is coming out of Natural News. And we live in a society in which there seems to be an article of faith within our political system, within our corporate media, that politics is able to trump science. That if politics says the sky is red, then we will tell you the sky is red. And some of it gets pretty obvious. One of the anti-science fails that the liberals love is this idea of transgenderism and the theory of spontaneous genetic transmutation, that if a man wants to be a woman and wishes hard enough, he will transform into a woman. And that is simply not scientifically accurate. They can have the surgery, they can have all kinds of chemicals and hormones that make them look more like a woman, but when you get down to that DNA, a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Period. End of discussion. Now, interestingly, considering this whole transgender issue, an area where politics is trumping science again is called chemical denialism, and ignoring the fact that a lot of chemicals in our food products and our environment do exert an influence on our bodies. Gender bender chemicals, such as atrazine, which can feminize men. They're still men genetically, but that's out there as well. We have this idea that is floating around that mercury is bad in the atmosphere and in fish, but good in vaccines, because that's what the politics says is going to be happening. By the way, I have a comment about that. I remember some years ago going through this rather terrible exercise where everybody was pushing these mercury-free batteries. Mercury's bad in the environment. We shouldn't be using it. Mercury's bad in the environment. And they were selling these mercury-free batteries, and they were hideously expensive, and they only lasted about 1/3 the time as a more conventional battery did. And that's when I began to realize that anytime somebody on television tells you something is bad, it's because their friends want to sell you something different for more money, lower quality. And then it occurred to me, yeah, mercury's bad in the environment. Where does the mercury come from? It comes from the environment. This ridiculous ban on lead ammunition that Obama signed into law, saying, you know, lead is bad in the environment. Where do you think we get the lead from in the first place? We get it from the environment. We're not adding lead to the environment. We're just moving it around. We're not adding mercury to the environment. We're just moving it around. But that's how ridiculous our politicized science has become. Mercury is bad in the environment, but good in vaccines, shoved into the arms of your children here. And let us not forget human-caused global warming and all the fraud, the ClimateGate releases, the leaks there, the memos, this computer code, NOAA being caught cooking their books. There's actually an investigation into that one now. And finally, of course, this idea that life doesn't begin until birth, which is the new one being pushed by the hardcore feminist and pro-abortion population control people, and it's okay to harvest organs from partially born living human beings. Even Hillary Clinton said, you're not really a human being until you're born. But if you damage an eagle's egg, you are going to jail for a very, very long time. That's how completely out of whack this is all gone. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Let's talk a little bit about computers and hackers and malware and all of this other stuff. It sometimes feels like honest, hardworking, ordinary American citizens are just fair game for every cyber criminal who's out there. And I started getting emails the other day about how people were trying to view my website on their smartphones, and they were getting these popovers that absolutely blanked out the screen. They couldn't see, they couldn't touch anything, couldn't get rid of the ad. The ads were often blank. Now, none of my advertisers have pop-overs. There are some pop-unders. And as it turns out, there is a malware making its way. It began on the desktop computers. It's now made its way into the smartphones, and it's called Ads Diamonds, and apparently it is spreading like wildfire. You can be infected by trying to download a free application that does something, and it is a browser hijacker, and it will hijack every single type of browser you have on your device and start inserting advertising. And they're not very good with their code writing, because in the example video that was sent to me, they didn't actually display an ad. They just obliterated my site. Maybe that was their goal. Maybe this is one of the CIA's little toys they have out there. We did post a virus removal guide on how to remove ads.diamonds, but right now we're in the middle of an absolute epidemic of all of this malware and malvertising. And one of the problems I have with these browser hijacking companies, and I don't know why the Federal Trade Commission isn't looking into this, these browser hijacking companies are making money, ad revenue, off of other people's websites. They don't have a website of their own. They're going on out and hijacking your browser to serve you their ads on top of other people's websites. And I think the Federal Trade Commission needs to start looking into this. So, a lot of malware. It's epidemic out there. And, of course, the government's not interested in doing anything about it at all. In fact, right now, they've gone over to the dark side, attacking my servers, attacking RBN, YouTube deleting videos from your favorites list. It's out in the open. This is a war between the totalitarians and the freedom of the American people. It's not covert anymore. It is overt. The fastest way to bring down a dictatorship is to force them to act like one where everybody can see it. Now, there is a white hat hacker, or maybe he's not so white. He's invented a gizmo that looks like an ordinary cell phone charger that can plug into your wall, plug into your phone, but it has an internal chip that can steal your passwords. It's sniffing out keystrokes as you type. For example, if you log into PayPal.com, it knows that the next two entries are going to be your user credentials and your password. And he doesn't make them and he doesn't sell them, but unfortunately he's put out the blueprints for people to build these things. Now, do you remember Prenda? They were a company of lawyers that were set up to enforce copyrights. And they originally started where they would go to companies that thought their material was being used unfairly, and they would file lawsuits on their behalf, and they would shut down these websites, and they'd collect a bunch of money, most of which would then go to their client. It later turned out, Prenda began to focus more and more on porn movies that were being illegally downloaded. And then it came on out. Prenda itself was producing porn videos, and they were planting them on download sites so that they could be copied. Then they would have the lawyers file a lawsuit for copyright infringement and sue these people. Needless to say, they've been put out of business, but basically at this point, throughout this whole court case, it's been confirmed. This copyright troll company, they had shell companies and false fronts to hide the fact they were themselves producing the porn movies. Because obviously you're going to make more money if you are the copyright holder and you sue, you get to keep all the money. It was another scam. I think future history books, and certainly the opinion of the rest of the world, are going to look at the United States of America as the empire of the scam artists. Story coming out of the Register in Great Britain. Somebody has done a study and concluded 92% of U.S. government websites totally suck. They basically studied the nearly 300 websites run by the U.S. government, and to nobody's surprise, they totally suck. 92% of them totally suck. We all remember the disaster with the Obamacare website. Every time I have to go over to the online copyright registration to register some of Claire's music, it's a nightmare to get through. You go through page after page after page. You have to re-enter the same stuff over and over and over again. It is one of the worst designed, least intuitive websites I've ever seen. The only one that seems to be worse is the website over at the FCC to get your radio licenses. That one is almost impossible to navigate or find anything, any kind of information. The indexes are all in the code numbers of the form. You click here for form FCC FD 10627/BZ. And for somebody who's just going on in trying to find out how to get a GMRS license, it's a very difficult mess. That's government work for you. That's government work. Remember after the disaster with the Obamacare website, and it cost a huge amount of money that went on a no-bid contract to a company, one of whose executives had been all buddy-buddy with Michelle Obama. And after it was all there and was a complete disaster, this group of 12 college students got together and wrote an actually working version of the Obamacare website that worked flawlessly. And they just did it in about a week's time. We had John McAfee was on the show, and he came back and said that website for Obamacare shouldn't have cost more than $20,000. Not the huge amount that it did. All right, let's grab a phone call here. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hope you're doing well, and the lovely lady Claire is feeling better.
Oh, she's much better. Thank you.
Great. You had John McAfee on your show? I missed it.
It was a while ago. It was a while ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You were talking about, the inefficiencies of government and their lack of the lack of the ability for them to create a functioning website. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but your country isn't the only one that exists that has that problem.
No, I understand that and I recognize it, but right now my focus is on this country, and the rest of the world is going to have to go take care of itself.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. I didn't want to take up a lot of your time, but because, of what you're describing on your show today, I had to chime in and say that, with all these CIA WikiLeaks that's going on the last, I believe, 2 days now, if I'm right, the state sponsor CBC up in Canada has decided to run a piece about why routers remain one of the most insecure devices in your home.
Yes.
So that's their answer to hacking and whatever else.
Well, they are right about that, because many routers, people who get the routers won't change that default password, and you really should. And there's also in a lot of routers, there's a switch that will decide whether the control panel for the router is visible only to the internal local area network, or if it can be accessed from outside, and you should definitely turn that one off.
Yes. Also, we all know the back door is already built in.
Yeah, the back doors are in the actual hardware. It's in the metal, courtesy of the CIA and the NSA.
Oh yeah, and they have the firmware. They have the firmware code to prove it.
Yeah, I'm starting to get really fond and nostalgic about my VIC-20 again. I'm going to haul that down and start doing the radio show on that.
Yep, I had one of those as well. The good old days.
Yes.
Thank you for your time, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, let's talk about radiation and whether it really is good for you, which was the propaganda coming out after Fukushima melted down. All these years later, it is very obvious Fukushima is a major, major problem. It is literally pouring radioactivity into the Pacific Ocean. Wild boar have taken over the land that was evacuated around Fukushima. The boar are radioactive. It's actually become a bit of a cult thing in Japan, where people will briefly enter the area and they'll find mutated plant life and take pictures and post it on their websites. You know, the daisy monster, things like that. Japan is trying to convince people it's okay to move back into Fukushima and start farming and manufacturing and paying taxes like the good little Japanese they are. And because of the Japanese culture's tendency to obey their government no matter what, unfortunately, sadly, many people are going to go in there. But they're already saying that radioactive waste is being detected in Japanese foodstuffs 200 miles away from the Daiichi facility. Some countries are already banning Japanese imports that are testing radioactive. There was one case where apparently Japan was shipping some cars to China. And when they got to the port in China, somebody ran a radiation meter over there and discovered that for some reason or other, the metal used in the construction of the cars was radioactive. So we have 3 melted reactor cores down in the ground, and apparently, because they're below the water table, it's basically just flowing out into the ocean. There's no way they can stop it. Now, do you remember a while back there was a story about radioactive iodine isotopes being detected all over Europe? And remember what the corporate media said? Oh, it's got to be a secret Russian nuclear weapons test above the Arctic Circle. Those bad Russians, they're at it again. And it turns out, once again, the corporate media did not have a clue what they were really talking about, because apparently there has been an issue at the Halden reactor in Norway. And apparently they had a problem with damaged fuel rods, which led to the initial release of radioactive substances into the ventilation system. And the situation, as far as we know, is still unresolved, and radioactive releases are still ongoing. And apparently, internal pressure in the reactor vessel has been keeping the reactor's cooling system valves open, or rather closed, so they're not even getting adequate circulation of the cooling water. This could be another Chernobyl about to happen. They're trying to tamp it down, but it's an ongoing situation. And this is where all that radiation that was detected all over Europe is coming from. Just like when Chernobyl went down and nobody talked about it, the first news was, we're detecting these radioactive isotopes all over Europe. And this is going on at this Halden reactor in Norway. Russia had nothing to do with it. The corporate media lied, 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 lied again. One of these days it's going to sink in that you live in a nation where you are ruled by lies, fraud, and deception. And at that point, I am hoping you will get really, really angry. Because getting angry is a good motivator to do what has to be done to get evil influences out of your life. Over in Flint, Michigan, it's been over 1,000 days since the people of Flint, Michigan had clean water. It was that long ago that the city of Flint, Michigan, to save a few dollars, disconnected from another civic water system and just started sucking water out of the Flint River. And they didn't even put the chemical in there to keep that water from leaching the lead out of the water mains, which is where the problem came from. The city of Flint, the mayor, is now saying they will not be able to have safe drinking water within the Flint water system for at least another 2 years. So anybody wants to stand up and say that government is taking care of the American people? Sure doesn't look like it from here. Yes, the vaccines are toxic. Doesn't matter, they're making money. Yes, GMO is bad for them. Doesn't matter, it's making money. Yes, the water is giving lead poisoning to the kids, but we saved a few bucks here. That's our government. Money, 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 money. Money and power. That's it. That's the entire agenda of the entire U.S. ruling class here. Another story coming out of Natural News. A peer-reviewed study has shown that vaccinated children have a 700% higher chance of neurodevelopment disorder. Vaccinated children are 7 times more likely to come down with these neurodevelopment issues, such as autism. This was a peer-reviewed study, and of course the corporate media and the CDC are now attacking it, but you need to remember something very important. The CDC itself owns more than 20 patents for vaccines, off of which it generates over $4.5 billion in revenue every year. The CDC is not an objective and impartial judge of vaccine safety. They are in the vaccine business. And remember, the CDC report that claimed to prove there was no link between vaccines and autism was a fraud. One of the study's authors went public and blew the whistle. The data was cherry-picked to produce a desired outcome, to produce a CDC report that the Vaccine Injury Court could then cite to deny payments to parents of children who had become autistic after being vaccinated. We need to save money. All these autistic children, they're costing us way too much money. We have to find some way to deny their claims. Up in Pennsylvania, Senate Bill 217 will destroy the parents' right to object to toxic vaccinations for their children. The vaccine companies are simply lobbying the government to make what they sell mandatory. We used to live in a country where businesses succeeded by making something you wanted to buy, like the Apple II or tickets to Avatar. And today, they've become totally fascistic. We're going to make a product that's an absolute piece of crud, doesn't really do anything, it's harmful and dangerous, and then we'll have the government order you to buy it. That's the new model. And they tried to export that attitude through the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. We're putting out GMO agriculture and overexpensive, poorly made products, but under this treaty, you will be forced to buy them. Up at the United Nations, their experts are denouncing this myth that pesticides like glyphosate are essential to feed the world. Their report came out and said these pesticides are having catastrophic impacts on the environment, human health, and society as a whole. But they're making money. That's all that really matters. We can make money selling this stuff to people, forcing them to buy it. That's all that really matters. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. Now, the inventor of the lithium-ion batteries has come on out saying that the reality is all lithium-ion batteries will eventually explode, and the likelihood of an explosion increases over time. Gee, it would have been nice to tell us that before everybody started investing in lithium-ion batteries, such as Boeing. But there may be more to this story than just a product warning, because it turns out this same individual and his team have devised a new lithium-ion battery that they say is proof against fire, overheating, and explosion. So this may be a little bit of corporate booga-booga to get everybody to switch over to the new product. It's like I said, when somebody on TV and movies, TV news tells you something's really bad for you, it's because they're working for somebody who wants you to stop buying somebody else's product and buy their product. Oh, here's a good one for the global warming people. If you are a student of the geologic history of our planet, you know that in addition to the KT boundary, the extinction of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, which seems to be tied in with the Chicxulub asteroid, there was also a major mass extinction at the Permian-Triassic boundary 250 million years ago. And there have actually been several mass extinctions, a lot of them tied to asteroid impacts. Now, the global warming cult has been out there saying that the Permian-Triassic extinction was due to global warming. Oh, global warming extincted all the life. That's why you've got to pay your carbon taxes. The latest study, according to RIMF.com, shows that actually the Earth was in the middle of an ice age during the Permian-Triassic mass extinction. We're going to take one more phone call here. George in Wisconsin. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I've been watching your channel for a while now, and I wanted to actually make a couple of observations about this new WikiLeaks.
Yes.
Alt 7 stuff. First of all, of course, people do realize that this does mean that there is no such thing as valid digital evidence anymore, correct?
Yeah, actually that does.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just agreeing with you. The revelation of all this fraud, especially that unit in the CIA that was stealing other people's hacking software to break into computers and leave an evidence trail that pointed elsewhere, basically means there is nothing in the computer IT world that can be assumed to be accurate and truthful. Can't be used as evidence, can't be used in a court of law. The CIA just literally undermined any prosecution that is based on computerized information.
Correct, because not only can they take anything they want, they can place anything they want.
That's absolutely right.
You could place, you could wake up and find, 10 gig of kiddie porn, and
that actually happened up in Canada. There was this guy that was breaking into computers and planning child porn to get them arrested. They were his business competitors. Fortunately, they caught up with him, and he is now in prison. George, going to have to let you go. There's the music. It's time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the afternoon. So we will be back tomorrow, Friday, with the lovely Lady Claire here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, stay informed, stay skeptical, make good choices. Please share everything that you learn here with everybody else. You can see all the roadblocks that are going up. They're trying to keep word on all of this stuff from getting out. I rely on you, the Rivero's Rangers, to keep all of this flooding into social media and email. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.